Well, good Wednesday evening, everyone. Welcome to Bowling with the Pfeff. I'm Andrew Pfeffer, and this is a platform for you to share your unique bowling story. It's all live on our YouTube channel. We have a Facebook group. If you're looking for more information on the show, just search Bowling with the Pfeff, and you will find a group that is north of 200 members, growing every day, which I certainly appreciate. And we talk about the happenings in bowling and both professionally and at some of the lower levels and things like that. I'm pretty excited because last night I actually started bowling again after taking 16 months off since the start of the pandemic. So I'm feeling pretty good, a little sore this morning. You may have seen that Facebook Live last night. Game needs some work, but we'll work on that over time. If you are interested in appearing on the show, we are always looking for guests. Be sure to reach out to me by DMing me on Facebook. Just search me, Andrew Pfeffer, or you can email me at bowlingwiththepfeff@yahoo.com, and we would love to get you on the schedule. Well, I am very excited to introduce our guest for tonight. His name is Justin Stevens, and he is joining us from Oahu, Hawaii. Justin, thank you so much for being with us.
I appreciate it, Andrew, and aloha to everybody and all your viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. It is about 1 p.m. there in Hawaii, and we are going to kind of start off your afternoon by talking about the two-handed style of bowling, which you have really mastered over the years. Our friends at the Bargain Bin Bowling Memes posted this guy the other day talking about when you switch to two hands and your average goes up 20 pins. Two-handed bowling is, to me, is certainly interesting. To some, it's polarizing, but to many, it's effective. So I guess my question to you is, were you always a two-hander, or is that something you converted to?
No, it was actually a conversion for me. And so initially I grew up in southern Arizona and was taught and just kind of grew up one-handed all throughout my military career. I was a one-handed bowler, and I kind of played with it because I hung around and competed with some people who had higher rev rates and kind of saw the way that their balls moved on the lanes and the way the pins just had the reaction and stuff. And I was like, man, that is cool. I got to figure out how to do that. And I was playing with one of my buddies at the time, and he had probably 550 rev rate. And I was like, I could do that too. And I think at the time I was a scrawny, like 150 wet kind of kid, didn't have the mass to put behind it or anything. So literally just put my two fingers in the hole and threw it, and just happened to catch the right lane reaction and just buried it. And we were like, whoa, what was that? So yeah, that's kind of the beginning of the journey. And then I kind of played with it anytime I needed to go deeper and didn't really have enough hand to make the ball come back. And in about, I want to say 2005, 2006, I think, I went to my second nationals tournament out in Vegas, and I was still bowling one-handed, kind of a hybrid version, and I did horrific. Anybody who was on my team during that years, I apologize to this day. I think I maybe shot 450 or something. It was horrible. So I was like, well, I got nothing else to lose except to go up from here. So literally went to the pro shop, and I told them, hey, I'm converting to two-handed. And then just finished out the tournament two-handed. And I think I ended up shooting like 650 and 700 the next two sets. And I was like, okay, wow. I'm making the switch all mentally and with equipment and all that stuff. So literally came back home and just started grinding away at it ever since, and just kind of figuring out it on my own. Like at the time, it wasn't kind of mainstream. There wasn't a lot of tutorials to figure it out. And yeah, it's funny because you mentioned that meme. It's not automatic that your average goes up 20 pins. Mine actually went from like a solid 200, low 200 average down to about a 180, 185. And I was just getting so frustrated with it. But then something clicked with somewhere in the process. And just started continuing to grow. And, I think my highest average was like a 230 something. So it definitely blew the top off of the ceiling that, regardless of how much I tried to practice and get better. Yeah, the style definitely probably played a factor in that as well. So.
Yeah. What kind of changes did you have to make? I mean, are we talking timing changes? Obviously, most two-handers I've seen, don't have a thumb hole drilled in their ball. I'm assuming you're along those lines too.
Yeah, absolutely. It was and that was, I think, probably the problem with the beginning part of it, because again, I tried to play the hybrid aspect, and the whole timing from one-handed to two-handed was 180 of each other, and it wasn't even like really opposing type styles or timing. It was just the subtle timings that can completely throw you off. And you ask anybody who competes, they're just like, man, I feel like my timing is off, but I just, can't feel it. And that usually what it was. And so, yeah, I needed to shift everything about the game, the way that I looked at the ball reaction on the lane, my timing of my approach, my body, the way it was positioned, the way I hold the ball during the approach. And yeah, pretty much relearning the whole game all over again from a different viewpoint.
Sure.
Once I made the shift. Yeah.
Every so often, you see a player, most famously Walter Ray Williams, go from the traditional style to the two-handed style when he needs it. Have you ever considered doing that, or is that just kind of, not something that that would work out for you?
Well, that was how I approached the two-handed style when I first started. I was using one-handed as my primary, and then if I needed to hook it more or I needed to play deeper, then I would shift. And again, I think that's what caused my frustration and just the lack of growth, even kind of the pitfall to my game was trying to play two different styles and not really having that consistency across the board made it super tough to really commit and really just focus on one style. And once I did that, yeah, the average started going up. Started learning different tweaks that I could do with just one style. I'm sure Walter Ray has so many more tricks in his bag than I ever will in my life. So he probably, it would not, I would not doubt that he could possibly, switch back and forth to do that. So.
Sure. You had mentioned in your bowling resume that you are something of an ambassador and a mentor of the two-handed style to other folks on the island. I think it's interesting, to talk to people who coach other people in that style, just because it's different than, the way I do it or the way other people do it. What do you tell people when they're starting out to learn the two-handed style? As far as maybe the important points to have top of mind.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the coaching that's similar to anybody coaching one-handed. As you kind of learn in the sport, as much as it is a physical game, and you can definitely put in the practice and the hours and the games to get your game physically ready. A lot of it is mental, and just understanding that it is a process. You're not going to get it automatically. It's going to take hard work. It's going to take having somebody who has kind of gone before you to kind of help you through those growing pains and stuff that, people who have gone through it have done. And that's and patience. I remember when I was a young teenage kid and just understanding the emotional instability that I had anytime I got frustrated. You ask my parents and they'd laugh to this day because I would kick ball returns and like throw temper tantrums and throw bowling balls all over the place. And so kind of having that hindsight to the younger generation now, just really communicating as best as I can that, having that is not going to help the process. It's actually probably going to set you back. And just having the patience of again, always learning. If you're not succeeding, you should be learning. You're not losing necessarily. You're only losing if you decide to. So,
Sure.
so that's what I usually communicate to them.
You had mentioned that the two-handed style wasn't incredibly popular or in the mainstream on the island when you were doing it when you were first starting out. So, what did the other folks on the island say to you or say about you when you were starting out?
We'll keep it PG. No, but yeah, literally, it was everything from cheater to illegal to you're not doing it right to whatever. You name it under the sun. I'm sure every two-hander's heard it at some point, usually by somebody who either doesn't want to even try to figure out a different way to do it or doesn't really do their homework. And that's usually what my rebuttal to every argument that somebody came to me about the style. I'd be like, show it to me in writing. If USBC says exactly I can't do it, then I'll believe you. But if it's just your opinion, that's fine. Everybody's open to their own opinion. And, if I continue to beat you and you keep complaining, then, you're either going to have to change or I got to start getting worse. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yes. I guess over this time, that's an interesting time, around 2005, 2006 to start that style, because that was kind of when you started seeing more and more high level, PBA superstars bowling that way. What's it been like to see that growth of it, not only where you are, but also nationwide?
Yeah, it's super exciting. And I think that was a big leverage point for a lot of the youth because, obviously they probably have the same thoughts as I did when I was a kid, is if I can make the ball hook more and I can make the pins react even more crazier, that's more fun to me, kind of things. And so having somebody on the pro levels like Belmo and Osku and now Kyle and all the up and comers now, that just adds the credibility to the style, that they can see somebody actually not only using the style but really being successful at it, and then that just adds confidence to them that they're on the right path. And then if that's the result they're looking for, that's that adds to their arsenal of the people who might go against what they're doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, as you said, you started in the traditional way. Tell me about how and when your bowling journey started.
Yeah, so my bowling journey started in California. So my parents used to do leagues, I think, on a Tuesday night, and I think at the time I was like 5 or 6, and they just tossed me to the side and say, "Hey, just go bowl while we're bowling league." And at the time, I didn't think too much of it, but it's kind of funny. You look back and you're just like, hindsight's completely 2020 of just the path that your life takes to get you where you're going. And so after that, they actually moved us to Southern Arizona. My dad took a business opportunity down there, and yeah, we moved into a small town. I think maybe 10-20,000 people. There's an army base down there, Fort Huachuca. Some may have heard about it, but really the demographic of people who really were in that town were, in the 50s and 70s age range, where you go to the bowling alley. That's back when the bowling alleys, you can smoke in it. And I remember spending hours and hours in the bowling alley keeping score. We still had the projector screens with the grease pencils, and I'd make like $5-10 every night from people appreciating I was keeping score, and walk out of there smelling like a cigarette butt and all that stuff. And so yeah, it was interesting time now, kind of looking back at it. But yeah, through that was just, in the town, there wasn't too much else to do. And so, you were either playing pool, bowling, and going to the movies, or you were on the flip side of the coin and the opposite side of the track, the mischievous stuff. And so, yeah, I decided to really take on bowling. If I wasn't there, I was at school. And as soon as I got out of school, I'd probably 4 or 5 hours at the bowling alley, come home, go to sleep, and do it all over again. And so, yeah, just continued to pursue that. And one of my crowning achievements at the time in '96, we this is back when they had still the Coca-Cola Youth Championships for each state, and each state had a boy representative and a girl representative to go to the nationals. And we traveled up to Tucson, which is about a 2-hour drive, and competed in that. And I was fortunate enough to get past Andrew Kane, who was the Goliath of Arizona youth bowling at the time.
Sure.
And so, to have beat him at the time, and then being able to go to Columbus, Ohio with Amy Rocco at the time. And it was just open to a whole different arena of competition on a national scale. I'm sure I didn't do too well because I completely forgot how I did. The experience as a whole was just completely memorable. And I think I still have that trophy in my parents' house somewhere that I think set the path to everything else that kind of happened after that. So,
Sure. Did you have, were your parents at a point in all this where maybe they started coaching you, or did you depend on a coach to kind of help you progress to that level where you were competing in tournaments like the Coke tournament?
I had a couple people who were speaking into my life as far as just giving me tips and stuff. I didn't have like a formal coaching program of like meeting every week or something like that. There was a lot of legends in my town that, kind of, you see them walking. It's kind of like Kingpin, right? You walk into the bowling alley, everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, it's so and so and so and so," right? Yeah. So those guys in the alley, and I completely pick their brain while I'm keeping score for them or something, been like, "Oh, okay, so you went high, what did you do?" Kind of thing. So, but not really having a formal so-called coach. But I had a couple people while I was coming up in the youth leagues of kind of the coordinators of the youth program that completely appreciative of all the work that they did to get those programs successful, and offering me the opportunity to really rise in those programs. So
you ended up going into the service in I believe it was 99.
Correct.
But you were able to bowl while you served. How did all that work?
So that was one of their recruiting tools that actually got me in. So if you would have asked me a couple days before I even signed the dotted line if I would have joined the military, I think you were crazy. But along the lines, they found out that I loved computers and I loved bowling, and so they said, "Hey, we got a computer program we can put you in, and oh, by the way, there's actually an all Navy bowling team." I said, "What? There's an all Navy bowling team?" And so I was like, "Okay, fine. I really don't have any plans for the next 6 years of my life. Sounds like a good plan." And so kind of headed down that route, and kind of was disheartened at the beginning because I actually went into training, and then after basic training, got to my first schooling. So I started asking around about this all Navy bowling team. I'm like, "Okay, so where do I sign up? Where do I do tryouts?" And these are people at the bowling alley, so I would figure they would be kind of at the heart of everything. And I'd ask them, and they just kind of give me this blank look, like, "All Navy bowling team? What are you talking about?"
No.
I was like, "Oh man, did they get me?" And so went to San Diego for my next training, and I was like, "Okay, for sure, somebody around here's got to know." And I'd ask them, and they give me the same blank look. And I was like, "Man, somebody pulled one over on me." And so luckily when I came to Hawaii, it was a big program out here. We had Millie Gomes, who is our military welfare director, who runs all the bowling programs at the time. And happened to walk into her bowling alley, and I was like, I was like disheartened. I'm like, "You guys by chance happen to know anything about an all Navy bowling team?" She's like, "Oh, absolutely. We actually have tryouts here in a couple months." I was like, "Oh, thank God." And so, we had something here locally called the Hawaii All Military Bowling Tournament, which was pretty much the highlight of my year while I was in the service. Each service kind of had their representative teams, and it was awesome. It was probably one of the best competitive bowling environments I've been in, just because everybody kind of had like their star bowlers and then the vice president bowlers and then, you know, the rest of the team, and everybody was super competitive. And so it was good fun just to razzle with everybody and build those relationships. To this day, we still have those relationships, and completely grateful for having that program, because yeah, that was able to kind of set the stepping stone to the national team, which I was able to bowl on a couple of years. We submit resumes, and they pick the designated teams based off of the resumes to go to a certain location at the time. Usually it was during the Team USA trials. And so we went to Texas one year, and I think Vegas another year. And yeah, it was awesome.
Wow. Yeah, you had mentioned, I mean, this string of years between 2000 and 2005 where you're part of all Navy Hawaii military team, the all military Hawaii team, all Navy USA team. What did it take to achieve those honors? I mean, you said the competition was pretty intense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, we would bowl qualifying in every different house around the island. And so each military base has a designated bowling alley, and they would set out a different pattern every day. And so each day would be a different event. So we'd have one event teams somewhere, one event singles, doubles somewhere else. And then we'd have, it's kind of a 3 tournament combined into this whole tournament series, where you have the tournament of that day, and then you'd find wherever you ranked. And then at the same time, you're accumulating for your service team. So there's really no like down day. Like if you're bowling bad, you kind of want to still do your best, because you're still trying to accumulate as many points for the team as a whole. And so yeah, that's kind of the way it worked. And then after all the days of qualifying, I think we had, I want to say 4 days of qualifying, 4 or 5 days of qualifying. We tally them up, and then we also have the individual overall, which if you place in the top 6, I want to say it was the top 6 of the men's division and then top 4 of the women's division, then you become part of the Hawaii all Navy or all military bowling team, which combined all the services into one of just the top 6 bowlers.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, that is pretty intense. What do you think you learned about yourself, you know, through either the service in general or bowling with other service members?
That is a great question. What did I learn about myself? I learned that I'm highly competitive. I at the time I kind of knew I was competitive, but then kind of being in that environment and just like having people kind of throw darts at you, and you're like, oh, that kind of stunk, you know, kind of thing. Then being able to throw them back and learning how to kind of stand up for yourself. Because when I came in the military, like I mentioned, I was a quiet kid. I kind of kept to myself. I truly believe the military just cracked my shell open and pried me open and been like, okay, this is the real you, by the way. You know, kind of thing. And so learning a lot about myself, learning a lot of how I can deal with adversity, learning how I could deal with different types of environments, different types of people, different types of cultures, and just really just being able to be a chameleon around people of, yeah, really not just being judgmental of anybody, learning people's stories and really just finding the beauty in it. And I think that has helped me to this day of what I continue to do anytime I interact with anybody.
Wow, that's well said. And, you know, like I told you leading up to this show, my father was a Navy veteran. My father-in-law was also. So I really appreciate, you know, what you and other folks who, you know, like you said, sign on the dotted line and get involved with the Navy do. That's, you know, that's a big thing, at least in my eyes. When your service ended in 2005, how did that change your routine or maybe your goals when it came to bowling?
Yeah, so out here, bowling community is super tight. And so right when I was coming out in 2005, you know, we had I think at one time in like the late 90s, I've heard the number of about 25 bowling alleys that we had out here. And unfortunately, you know, due to downsizing and the cost of business and whatever the reason is, that's kind of dwindled down to just a handful. And so really just trying to find leagues that I would be able to participate in, because certain leagues have certain regulations of just wanting a certain window of bowler averages and abilities and stuff like that. So they just wanted to kind of keep it close knit. And so finding those leagues were kind of tough to find around the island. But just really priming myself to wanting to take that next step into possibly going out on tour, living that full experience of actually being in the environment to compete with the big guys who I've watched growing up my whole life. And I was able to have regionals out here. So fortunate to, the Mages, who were the regional directors for the West Coast of PBA, and all the years that they did of bringing the tournament out here to the islands. I'm sure it was as much as a benefit to the bowlers on the mainland to just have another reason to come to Hawaii. But for us out here on the islands who may not have a regular route to be able to travel to the mainland to compete, it was a world game changer as far as just being able to see kind of where I stack amongst the people who may be bowling at a higher competition level than we were able to be exposed to here.
Sure. What was it that told you, inside, hey, I can compete with these guys? Because you're not going out to a PBA event, just to be there. They're expensive and probably pretty humbling. So what tells you inside, you know what, I'm going to go to this thing and I'm going to beat some folks?
Yeah, I think it all started with the regional tours that came out here, just kind of seeing where I'd end up in placing. I've, placed in the top 5 on a consistent basis over the years between, I want to say 08 and 14, I think, or something like that. So just that consistent track record of being like, okay, maybe I, have what it takes mentally and physically, and, understanding that, this is an isolated group of bowlers, and that in a so-called small pond, there's a bigger ocean on the other side. Let's kind of see where I end up over there. And I mean, as much as I had the self-belief that I would love to do well against them, but kind of having the reality and the understanding that I'm completely in learn mode. Like, as much as I'm going to do my best and try my best to compete with these guys, and which, like you said, super humbling to realize like how small of a fish you are in the big ocean when you just see these guys who make it look like a house shot, and you're just like, how in the world are they making their balls do that? And like, I'm sitting here and it's going all over the place and all that stuff. But yeah, it was I think it was actually the first World Series of bowling. So I kind of took the leap, like I mentioned earlier. It just made logistic sense to head to Vegas, being able to bowl on each animal pattern, to have a tournament, and then kind of have a major, the World Championships after. So having so-called 5 tournaments in one place was like, okay, yeah, let's go try it. Little did I know what I was going into was a 60-game week of just grueling 10 games a day on different animal patterns, and like me not really having a consistent exposure to animal patterns out here. Like, we don't really do PBA leagues or anything here, so kind of figuring out like how to transition to the lanes and figure out what my equipment's doing, and at the same time was able to do my best not to get starstruck, right? Like, I'm going there like, okay, these are the guys you watched growing up. Don't like try and act like a kid in a candy store, like, hey, can I have your autograph? It's like, dude, I'm competing against you. Like,
Right.
no way, right? And so, but I mean, again, it was, as much as I tried to avoid it, I couldn't help myself. I was just like, oh my gosh, it's Norm Duke, it's Walter Ray, these are the guys that like I watched growing up on ABC and on Saturday mornings and all that stuff. So I mean, just to be able to kind of talk to them personally, and then get around them, and then see how how good these guys that are on tour really, really are. And it's kind of like, I'm sure everybody who's tried golfing at one point in time, they would see Tiger Woods on the TV, and it's like, oh yeah, that seems easy enough.
Right.
And then you go on the course, and you're like, oh, how in the world?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great exposure just to the bigger scheme of things, and like I mentioned before, just kind of seeing where that path was heading moving forward, and kind of having a reflection talk with myself after that of just like, yeah, you got a long road ahead of you, man, because I'm sure these guys have been at it for years, if not their whole life, and you're just kind of starting. And at the time, I believe I was in a serious relationship with my now wife. So kind of knowing family life was hopefully in the future, and understanding that maybe that was going to be a higher priority than trying to head down this the tour dream. So, but I definitely gave it a good run for about a year or two. I'd make it out to 4 or 5 tournaments in certain hubs, and again, I built some great relationships, got great experience, and just learned little things that did help me when I did come back, just to really take my game to the next level.
With the benefit of hindsight, you now have the opportunity to think back and consider, boy, is there anything I could have done differently to prepare myself for what I faced at that World Series of Bowling or at those tournament hubs? Is there anything you could have done?
I mean, really, the only preparation I could think that I could have done better was just have more exposure to like sport leagues or PBA patterns. And again, out here, it's tough to come by. There, obviously, in more recent years, they've allowed more opportunities for people to have exposure to that. But yeah, just I think going to the mainland and maybe having more of a consistent exposure before jumping into the deep end of the pool probably would have helped me a little bit. But again, it was one of those just kind of learn as I go, and I'll see where I'm at as far as the level of how much commitment I believe it's going to take. And I think it was also edified that from people who were on tour to be like, yep, I've been at this for 5-6 years and I'm always learning. I'm like, okay, well, so now I got to look 5-6 years down the road, and I want to keep learning and grinding it out. But yeah, it was a great experience. Wouldn't change it for the world, because again, it was one of those things like I've always wanted to do growing up, and just being able to again lace them up with the best. And even though I probably wasn't a blip on the radar, but just being in that environment and just understanding the mindset that it's going to take, the grind that they do on a weekly basis, it was again more respect to them. It was definitely humbling for me, and completely grateful for again the relationships and the connections I built along the way.
Sure. You were more than a blip on the radar as far as the regional level, though. Tell me about some of the successes you had on the regional PBA tour.
Yeah, so out here, like I mentioned, Gary and Tony Mage, they were awesome enough to bring the tour out here once a year on a consistent basis. I think it was around June, July timeframe. And they tried to set it up, again, kind of like for Hawaii people to go to the mainland. They tried to make it beneficial for people the mainland coming here. So they tried their best to set up 2 or 3 tournaments, either here or on a neighboring island, just to give different exposure to different environments and stuff. And so because of that, was able to kind of have a little bit of exposure to PBA patterns and stuff, to do my best in those kind of regional settings. And yeah, I was able to do pretty well early on. I think I placed in like 5th and maybe my 2nd or 3rd regional. And then the snowball effect of just trying to keep up with training for the regionals every year. That was kind of my big major for the tournaments out here, and yeah, was just doing my best to make the cut initially, and then you just try your best to get through the match plays and make it to the top matches, and was able to pull away a regional win. I don't know if you see back here. Yeah, that's my regional trophy that was able to get in 09. And then on that picture you just showed, that was me coming runner up to the now legendary left-hander Jacob Buttroff, who I think that was his 5th regional. Now I think he just won 27. So yeah, I was just grateful again just to make it that far and build the relationships. And luckily, I just wanted to make reference to Tony Reyes. He was a big superstar that made consistent trips out every year during that time. And that's what the TR is for. And he during kind of that regional window that I was succeeding and kind of thinking about going on tour, he played a big part in kind of taking me under his wing, just from his experience and obviously his success on tour. And he opened the door to come out and actually kind of live his life, so to speak, for a week, and pick his brain about anything that I had questions about before I kind of made that leap. And so I was completely grateful for that. I miss him big time, but he definitely imparted a lot of great wisdom, a lot of great mindset, a lot of great philosophies as far as if I was to make that leap to the tour, what I should expect and kind of what, to avoid. And, again, getting frustrated, getting beating up on yourself and all that stuff, but just understanding that it's a learning process at all times. And just making the most of it.
That's awesome that, that he served as kind of a mentor for you in that position. And, I was, of course, shocked when I heard the news that he had passed away at really such a young age, and kind of as he was, really starting to gain some steam in bowling. What was he like as a competitor? I mean, for people who are now only getting to see, what he did in YouTube videos, what should they know about Tony Reyes?
Tony was very competitive. As I'm sure you ask any bowler is going to be competitive at some level. But off the lanes, complete, honest, humble, best guy you could possibly meet, that, you could clink beers with, or you can eat lunch with, or whatever, and just an open-hearted, hard on his sleeve type guy, hence the reason why he's sorely missed nowadays. But he, has a great friend network and just everything that he did. And like I say, he was an ambassador just for the sport as a whole, not so much just being a great competitor and achieving on the tour. But yeah, when he's on the lanes, like when he comes out for the regionals, and if he's struggling, he shows it. And if he's, like anybody, like when you're bowling great, everything's good. But when you're struggling, it can definitely wear on you. And I mean, he was no different, especially having the level of competitiveness that he always wanted to achieve greatness. And anybody who wants to have that achievement is definitely, gonna wear his emotions usually on their sleeve to let you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Another, tournament tour that you had some success in was Hawaii TV bowling. What was that all about?
Yeah, so Hawaii TV bowling was a great program here locally. So every week on Sundays, they would have a tournament for any scratch bowlers that wanted to come out at a different bowling alley. So obviously, like I mentioned earlier, there was a lot more bowling alleys back in the day. Yeah, when I came out here to the islands, it was one of the first circuits that I heard about, and I was just super excited to be a part of it in the few years that I was able to compete in it. And so, yeah, we compete 3 games, and then we go to match play, single elimination, and then if you make the top 5, then you're able. We had the local TV station that would televise our stepladder matches, and so yeah, it was just an exciting competitive atmosphere. All the best bowlers on the islands, and even some on the mainland, would make it over to compete. And this was, I think, kind of one step above what used to be IAS singles, which used to be another program that a lot of people from the mainland kind of came over. And this was the kind of the adult step up of, just having a consistent tournament circuit. And then, unfortunately, the program kind of folded with the founders, having some medical things and not being able to run it as much as they used to. So we have now, we have some local ambassadors that are coming up with the Hawaii Bowlers Tour that is more focused on the youth of bowling to really, groom them and I'm not groom them, but like teach them and mentor them of a competitive environment, to have kind of that same environment that we had with the Hawaii TV bowling of being able to compete at different oil patterns, being able to get around the community of bowling, and being able to offer opportunities to either go collegiate, which a lot of the kids do head that route with the help of Chad Pohas. He's the founder of Hawaii Bowlers Tour, and just giving them the best opportunities to succeed if in bowling, but really in life, because a lot of I'm sure I can speak for anybody who's kind of personally developed in the sport, and then obviously having some experience in life is, you just want to continue to progress and get better, and just understanding that, having the opportunity to do that in the sport of bowling is definitely a great avenue that we now offer with the youth.
Sure. Back in 2014, you made a lot of noise in the USBC Open Championships. Going back through the records, and I'm hoping I got it right, it looks like you shot 21.55. Good for 22nd in all events. That's a monster score, and it's a score that would, that in certain years may have even won all events. What went so right for you at that tournament?
I honestly can't even tell you. I mean, I honestly think it was probably a culmination of, like I said, those years prior of just being in a competitive atmosphere, of continually learning, of learning my equipment, of being on staff with Columbia 300, of just learning putting all the puzzles pieces together, working different avenues of my game. It's hilarious because I kind of look back at that, and I actually had to play the outside part of the lane, which is my kryptonite. I hate the outside part of the lane just because, my body has got a tweak, and I had to do so many adjustmts. But for some reason that day, the outside lane or outside part, like I want to say 5 out, it was there. And I literally stayed there pretty much the whole tournament, and I was able to stay consistent enough to, put up some good scores each day. And yeah, it was to this day, it was kind of a vague memory, because I was just on robot mode. Like literally every shot was just there. And I maybe missed a handful of shots, I'm sure, threw some bad shots, but it was a fun time. And I was fortunate enough to actually, I think that year, either that year or the year prior, I think it was that year, where I actually wasn't planning on bowling the Open Championships. I was like, oh, the team I usually went with, we kind of, everybody had different schedules and couldn't work it out. And so I just got put on a sub list, and the director of the tournament called me up, and he's like, hey, I got a team if you want to sit on it. And I'm like, great. I'm planning on being in Vegas anyway. And so after that, of course, I was blessed enough to bowl with that team a handful of years later because, I made a good impression, I guess. But it was, yeah, it was good fun. And yeah, it was awesome to just have that accomplishment in such a prestigious tournament, and to have that experience. It was awesome.
Yeah. You got to understand, I've never shot the Open Championships. I was supposed to in, in 20, but the pandemic happened. Everything kind of got, you know, scrambled, we'll say. What is, how much weight does that tournament hold, for someone like you who's been in regionals, who's bowled some national tour events? How big a deal is the Open Championship?
Championships is like a big deal. Like even I think the national guys they've come out the last couple of years, and they're looking to put their scores up for 2 days of competition with everybody else who's putting in scores for 2 days of competition. And just to have it in such a big window of time, say February to, I want to say, July or something like that, of just putting up scores every day, and being able to, especially the people that win, to put up a score high enough that keeps everybody else off your back, kind of thing. It's definitely prestigious, I think. I mean, and we're all bowling the same patterns. We're all bowling the same house. And so just, to have that under your belt, and then the guys who win multiple years, it's much respect to them.
Yeah.
So.
You said that you were the first to win both the Hawaii TV tournament and the PBA regional title utilizing the two-handed style. Are you talking the first two-hander to win a regional title, or a regional title in Hawaii?
I want to say in Hawaii. I can speak for Hawaii.
Okay.
I'm sure there's records that might tell me I'm not the first regional, but again, it was kind of at the beginning of the whole style kind of coming mainstream. So if somebody else has a title before 2009, great. They beat me out, but
let us know.
But to my knowledge, I think just because of the infancy of the style, I would feel confident that I could claim that. But if not, it's all good too.
Well, either way, I mean, having that kind of success with the two-handed style on the island, to be able to say that you're the first two-hander to win Hawaii TV bowling. I mean, what does that mean to you? How important is it to you to be, and I described you in this episode as a pioneer in paradise, to be a pioneer, in your slice of the world there, as in two-handed bowling?
Yeah. Again, appreciate the title of pioneer. That just kind of takes me back to the people who like founded America, right? It's like, but for me, I think it played a huge part as far as the momentum of the style here in the islands, right? Like and you look around now, like we have high school bowling out here is ridiculous. It's like collegiate bowling on the mainland, where it's like a hugely competitive environment. But you just kind of look down the lanes of nowadays of who bowls two-handed. It's almost 2 out of the 5 bowlers on a team, kind of thing. And so it's very common that a lot of kids and youth prefer that style. And I think that played a crucial part in the early days of when it wasn't so popular, of maybe the kids not having the confidence to even try it, especially in legal competition. Because they didn't really see anybody who kind of was confident in it or was successful in it. And so to kind of have that, to be the person that people point at and be like, well, Justin does it. He bowls league and he bowls tournaments and he bowls regional tournaments, and they're not stopping him, so it should be all right for you to do it, kind of thing. And so that's usually what I get a lot of questions, either from coaches or from parents or even the kids themselves. And they're just like, is it legal? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Feel confident in what you're doing. If that's what you want to learn, then go learn it. And so I think that played it. And same as Belmonte is just kind of breaking that mold of success, or being the person that shows people success in what they're doing. I think just allows more people to believe that they can accomplish the same things. And I think the quote is, when one dream becomes achieved, then thousands become possible. And so I think that just goes with just being an example of what's possible.
Sure. The pandemic had, just an immense impact on bowling as a whole, certainly where I am in the Midwest. What kind of impact did it have in Hawaii? And did you keep bowling through it, or did it force you to take any time off?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely played a big part out here. I think don't quote me on the time frame, but I want to say we went at least 4 to 5 months of complete lockdown. Like the bowling alleys couldn't even open to entertain people even trying to bowl. And then, as much as they could, without putting themselves under, they met whatever state regulations or things that they had in place that they needed to follow to be open. And then unfortunately, again, so they adhered to all the regulations, then they got shut down again. And then it's like, ugh. So now they just, that I think the second one hurt a lot more than the first one, because they were kind of ramping up to kind of get back into a normal. But back now, I think everything's pretty in good flow as far as being open for people who want to go bowling to go bowling. Pro shops are open, so people can get equipment, and they adhere to all the regulations the state sets as far as masks, as far as having the plastic sheets up between lanes and all that stuff. So yeah, definitely hopeful that all the businesses that were able to make it through are in it for the long haul. Like I mentioned before, all the bowling alleys that aren't around now kind of closed up way before the pandemic. So the handful of alleys that we do have on the military bases and stuff are still functioning, and nobody really had to close down. Sure. Except I think we have one. Actually, I take that back. We have one on Kailua side, poly lanes, that they had to close down. So.
Okay. But the others made it through, which is a good thing. And what about you? Did you continue to bowl after they were allowed to open?
Yeah, I did my best to break the rust off. I took about a good 6 months off of not touching a bowling ball, which I think was good in a way, I guess, because I just entered parenthood, so that's a whole different chapter. That bowling kind of took a backseat to, and was able to spend more time with my family and my daughter and my wife and stuff. And so it really wasn't on the forefront of my mind, like, oh, I gotta go bowling, because I was busy with other priorities. And so but yeah, I definitely want to I did my best to go out, support business, and again break the rust off, because we did have some local public alleys that we're trying to hold socials, so just competitive environments, but we didn't want to call it a tournament because we couldn't have a tournament. Right. So we were having socials of just allowing people to kind of still have that competitive environment to compete in. So obviously wanting to be in that environment and compete, so I had to go practice a little bit.
For sure. What about now? Let's talk about, I guess, what the future looks like for you, goals, anything like that. I mean, where are you in terms of bowling right now? And do your goals include any kind of a return to the PBA, be it regional, national, PBA 50 when we get to that point?
Hey, man, it's funny. You mentioned PBA 50, and I'm like, I'm not that far off. I'm in single digits to get there, which is scary.
You and me both.
Yeah. So, hopefully I can still two-hand bowl when I'm 50. That'd be awesome. But yeah, I mean, goals moving forward, really it's just passing it down to the next generation, just kind of passing on the wisdom. And that's why I'm completely grateful you opened the door to this kind of platform. And hopefully, will offer some either knowledge or insight, or just from my past experience and my current mindset and stuff like that, to help the next generation moving forward. That's why I think it's huge that Chad out here is doing a Hawaii Bowlers Tour, which focuses a lot on the youth, and just bringing up the next generation to really respect the sport, understand what opportunities are available, and just being able to position themselves to succeed, not only in bowling, because hopefully the sport continues to grow. It's been exciting to just see the tour just kind of take the marketing shifts and the partnerships and stuff they put in place to make it more attractive financially for the touring guys and all that stuff. And so that's definitely seems like it's heading in the right direction. But for me, it's just really staying competitive. As much as I try and get out and practice and kind of keep the rust off, I'm noticing the youth of today, man, like they are good. Like you mentioned earlier, Spencer and all the guys that were in the youth championship, I'm watching them and I'm like, there is no way I was throwing a ball like that at 16. So and I mean, here locally, we have huge talent of just these kids coming up. And I mean, it's exciting for the sport just because, they've been able to glean from coaches like Chad and some people out here locally, as well as on a national scale, of like being able to leverage the collegiate coaches and stuff to become the best at what they do. And if I can play a little part in that, whether it be just instilling some mindset or just the mental game or the physical game, if they ask, I'd be more than happy to offer any tips that would help them in that journey.
Yeah. And, another way, you were talking about how Hawaii's bowling community is pretty close knit. Another way, we make that general bowling community smaller is through social media. You've got the Aloha Bowling Community Facebook page. Tell me about that. What's that all about, and how did you find the kind of success that you have? I mean, 700 plus members there.
Yeah, and so being out here on the island, we just wanted to, and I'm tech by trade, and so I dabble in social, I dabble in computers and everything technological. So having a central platform to just be able to share information, it was non-existent at the time, and so just understanding the power of Facebook, and just everybody and their mom and their grandma has a Facebook nowadays, so being able to offer a centralized location for not only the community to come together, but really to be able to have somewhere where somebody can just come in and see what kind of tournaments were going on, see the latest information as far as equipment releases and the successes here locally. Like if somebody shoots an honor score or something, they can all post this. So it just brings it, again, the community closer together. So next time you see somebody at the bowling alley, we're kind of all on the same page of what's going on as far as the community goes here locally, whether you're on one side of the island or the other. This kind of just offers a place where people can either share their stories or share their successes, or just being able to pass out information for anybody who wants to participate.
You like that shameless self-promotion where I landed on the page? that was by design. So on our show, as you've seen before, we do a segment called Off the Sheet, and that's where you challenge another person. And again, bowling skill level is kind of irrelevant, but someone who has a passion for the sport and a unique bowling story to tell, which, let's face it, we all do. So, Justin Stevens, who would you like to challenge to be a guest on a future episode of Bowling with the Fef?
Well, I put some thought into this because I watch your show, and so I've thought long and hard about it. And really, the first people that come to mind, just because of their passion of the sport and really, their livelihood of the sport, really pouring through their veins, is the Parkin family, Missy and Drew Parkin. And so I would definitely, recommend that you bring them on the show because they can offer not only the touring aspect because Missy's on the PBWBA, or business aspect because they run a few pro shops, they run like 12, I think, in the California area. And then they also just accumulated a bowling alley. So I think they would offer huge benefit to not only your viewership, but just a different perspective on the sport.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for. And Missy and Drew, if you happen to be watching and are up for the challenge, feel free to get a hold of me, DM me on Facebook, or email bowlingwiththefeth@yahoo.com. We would be honored to get you on the schedule and share your bowling story. Justin, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your bowling journey, and continued success to you in our wonderful sport out there.
Awesome. No, I appreciate the opportunity. And again, thanks for offering the opportunity to come on and share what I can.
Absolutely. No, totally appreciate a great conversation with Justin Stevens of Honolulu, Hawaii. Our next live stream is coming up a week from today, Wednesday, May 19th, 6 p.m. Central. We hope you'll be back for that. Until then, be just and fear not. We'll see you next time.